Good evening, everyone. All right, thank you so much for being here. I know that we just finished Thanksgiving and we're on our way to the holiday season. And me, I love Christmas, but the only thing is that tonight is like my Christmas Eve right now. I've been wanting to do something with this master plan since the transition last year. So this is slightly over a year in the making, and I'm very excited that you're all here. When I walked this town as a candidate and as mayor, and talking and listening to people, there were a lot of concerns that people had about the future and about quality of life here in this township. Some of the issues weren't what I thought they were until I started listening to what people had on their minds. We all drove here and took Route 202. That was a big one, okay? Traffic was a big one. Development, schools, recreation, quality of life issues, transportation, speeding, and I just started coming to the point that we need to plan. Now, we've had a master plan in town for a while, okay? That we first started in the 70s, I believe, and it gets updated every now and then, and this is what this is. This is our big update. But I want to be as holistic as possible in doing this, which is why I recruited and brought in BFJ Planning and Susan Favate, our new township planner, who's going to be who's going to shepherd us in with this new master plan. And it's very important to me that we do this as collaborative as possible and as transparent as possible. That's something I always wanted for this administration and how we were going to do this, and especially for this master plan. There is no Democratic way to do things. There's no Republican way to do things. There's a right way to do things. And that's how we're going to do this. This is not going to be a red and blue issue. This is going to be about our township. As simple as that. And we need to work together. And I need to get input from everyone, even people that disagree with me. I need your input. And it's very important. First of all, before I move any further, I would like to acknowledge the presence of a former mayor. Well, I still call her mayor. I never call her former. And a mentor of mine, Mayor Mimi Letts. It seems like I have a full quorum here of the Parsippany Township Council, which I'm very happy for. So I'd like to acknowledge the presence of Council President Paul Carifi. Where are you? There you are. Okay. Council Vice President Janice McCarthy. Our longest serving council member, Michael DiPiero. Councilwoman Loretta Gragnani. And Councilwoman Emily Peterson. We are also joined by our school superintendent, Dr. Barbara Sargent. Dr. Sargent. Frank, I'm going to need a little help. I don't know all the school board members that are here. How many are here? Do you have a quorum also? Please, Tim Berrios. Okay, who else is here? Judy Mayer? That's it. Okay, and let's thank them also. Thank you for being here. So, without further ado, I would like to bring up and introduce to you your planning board president, who has many experiences on the planning board. How many years now, Bob?
Since 96.
696. Okay. That would make a good scotch, actually. Right, okay. So I would like to call up Mr. Bob Keller. Thank you.
I'd just like to repeat my thanks to all of you for coming tonight. My tenure on the planning board, I've sat through a lot of planning board reevaluations. And the way they usually work is the planning board huddles in at a couple of meetings, maybe a Saturday, and we come up with a new document, and then we advertise in the legal notices that you can come and comment. Well, usually 2 or 3 people who have absolutely nothing else to do come to the planning board meeting and don't comment, but they sit and listen. And the reevaluation report is completed. We've met the letter of the law. As chairman this year, Michael and I talked, and I said, I don't want to do it that way. I want the public input first, so that we can come up with a document that is for you, the residents of Parsippany, not just for the little group that's called the Parsippany Planning Board. So again, thank you for coming. Looking forward to having your input so that we can do this. Now, this is a formal planning board meeting, so I'd like to announce that it is being conducted in accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act, and it's being conducted according to NJSA 10:4-6 et sec of the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act. What I'd like to do now is open the meeting to anyone that has anything to come before the planning board that is not on the agenda for this evening. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public portion and ask Nora Jolie, our planning board clerk, to read the roll.
Mr. Geary?
Here.
Ms. Hernandez? Here. Councilwoman McCarthy? Here. Ms. Wheeling? Here. Mr. Von Aiken?
Here.
Chairman Keller?
Here.
Also present tonight, we have our board planner, Scott Carlson.
Here.
Board attorney, sorry. Board engineer, Andrew Canaviano.
Here.
And board planner, Susan Favate. Here.
Thank you. Now, I am honored. I've sat right next to this woman all year so far, and she is a delight. She knows her stuff, and I couldn't be more excited to have her shepherding the township through this planning board reevaluation of the master plan. Susan Favate.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Mayor. That's some introduction. I hope I live up to it. We are thrilled to see all of you here tonight. This is a fantastic turnout. We weren't quite sure. People might still be hungover from Turkey a few days ago and other things perhaps, but thank you all for coming, for taking time out of your evening. We're really excited to start this process with you, the public, and hear what you have to say about the master plan. Is this my clicker? So let's see if I can make this work. So tonight, well, first of all, excuse me, let me just ask the planning board members if they could stand. You just heard them answer roll call, but let's recognize all the planning board members. We have most of the board here tonight. The planning board, thank you. The planning board, it is the agency within the township who has the actual authority to adopt the master plan. They are responsible for preparing the master plan and adopting it ultimately. So in some sense, it's their plan, but it's based on what they hear from you and also various other township stakeholders. So we're happy to have most members of the board tonight. So what is a master plan? I'm going to see if I can get the right angle here. So basically, it's a blueprint for the town's future in a nutshell. It's a policy document. It helps the planning board in particular, but also the township council and other government departments, municipal departments. It helps them plan for the future, as the mayor just said, across a whole range of topics: traffic, circulation, parks and open space, general development, housing, municipal facilities, recycling, all of these things can all go into the master plan. It is not a law, it's not zoning. So a lot of times people confuse the master plan with zoning. Zoning has to be based on a master plan. That's a requirement by the courts. But first you do the master plan before you figure out what your laws are. So it's a guiding document for those laws and regulations, and also for capital spending. So those are some implementation parts of the master plan. By state law, you are required to at least update your plan every 10 years. And the last time Parsippany did that was 2014. So fairly recently, but it's been quite a while since you've undertaken a significant update, sort of a brand new master plan. So we'll be looking primarily at how the township has changed basically since 2014, but also kind of what the overall trends are across the township. So what goes into a master plan? Well, in terms of requirements by the state, you have to have sort of a vision statement, some goals, policies, objectives, what are your grounding principles, essentially. You also have to have a land use plan, and that, as I said, is very important for zoning because the zoning has to be based on that plan. So you have to have a sense of where you want your development to go, where you think things should be preserved, where open space should be, really kind of what your plan is in terms of development and land use for the future. There's a whole host of other things that can go into the master plan, then it's totally up to you. So things like open space recreation, cultural resources, Circulation, which we mean traffic primarily, but it's not all about cars necessarily. It's also pedestrian circulation, transit, bikes, all of that gets wrapped up into circulation and parking as well. Economic development, what is your business community and your office community? How do you want to encourage that to remain vital? Housing is a big one, and then infrastructure and sustainability. All of those can go into a master plan, and we anticipate addressing all of those areas as part of this process. So as I said, the last time Parsippany did a master plan reexamination report was in 2014. You've been at it for quite a while, though, in terms of planning. You had your very first master plan in '57, but then the last time you did a full master plan update, sort of a comprehensive master plan, was back in 1976. And so ever since then, you've been sort of re-examining. It used to be every 6 years, and now it's every 10. So you've been meeting the statute, updating a little bit here and there, but you haven't done kind of a comprehensive look really in quite some time. So it's a really good opportunity at this point to do that. So in terms of our process with the planning board, we anticipate taking the next, I guess it's 8 or 9 months. We've been started. We had a little bit of a startup in early fall. We've done some work on existing conditions, and we're going to keep doing that sort of through the end of the year into early 2019 in February. We're going to come up with something, sort of an interim document called Parsippany Troy Hills Today. Where are you now? What does that mean? So what are some issues and opportunities based on what your existing conditions are? In the spring, we'll be working on actual recommendations, and I just want to state there are no recommendations at this point. What this is about tonight in particular is hearing from you, and we're going to collect that input, combine it with what we hear from meetings with department heads, focus groups, with specific stakeholders like environmental stakeholders. We're going to meet with the school board at some point, department head meetings, neighborhood outreach. So we're going to really combine everything that we hear and learn and our analysis that we're doing with the census data and other data sources to figure out what are some of the issues, and that will really drive the recommendations. So we're pretty much at the early stage here in terms of final recommendations, but we're going to get to that point in the spring, and then we'll spend late spring, early summer refining that plan, the recommendations, and coming up with a final document that the planning board will be in position to adopt. And that is done by a formal public hearing, so probably early summer, early to midsummer. There will also be an online survey, which we'll be doing in 2019, which will provide another opportunity for input. And we anticipate having a second workshop like this, a town-wide workshop, probably in April. We may do some other small, like neighborhood meetings, but we'll have 2 town-wide workshops, and of course the public hearing is also open to anyone in the township. Okay, so we did, as I said, we started up in the fall, and we've done a little bit of public outreach. We were at the Fall Fair, Fall Festival, which was a beautiful day. I think some of you were probably there. Basically to let people know that this was happening, the process had started, and we did a little exercise where we asked people, what are the things that they really care about, the things they would like to see in Parsippany Troy Hills in the next 10 years. And you can see we got a lot of great ideas. They're on all those Post-it notes. We have a report of that workshop. If it's not on the township website, we'll make sure it gets there. To give you a sense of some of the consensus ideas that people had. I think you can imagine what some of the concerns were. Traffic probably first and foremost, but a lot of concerns just about general municipal services like trash pickup, plowing, things like that. We may not be able to solve all those issues in the master plan, but it's good to hear that those are concerns because it really helps us know kind of where to go. So this was a really great opportunity to kind of test the waters a little bit and dip our toes into the process and hear from some of your neighbors. So now I'm going to turn it over to Taylor for a few slides on population and demographics. Where are you now? For a trip.
Hello, as Susan said, my name is Taylor Young, and the data from these slides all comes from the U.S. Census, the 2000, 2010, and then 2016. The data from here and then the rest of our slides is going to reflect the most up-to-date, complete data sources, with 2016 being the most complete, from the census that we have. So Parsippany has a population of 53,515. It's grown since 2000. A lot of that growth has come from adults 50 years and older, which follows trends in the county. You can see, the percent of population 50 to 64, 27%, and then 65 and over. Sorry, that's percent change. It's grown since 2000 by 27%, and then the amount of population 65 and older has grown by 45% since 2000. To get another look at population, we've looked at school enrollment. Now this data comes from the state, so it just reflects the overall school system. It does not tell us each individual elementary school, middle school, high school. Total enrollment is down by 130 students. Most of that comes from the high school because middle school and elementary school enrollment is up. I believe middle school or elementary school, if you assume 20 children per class, it's about 2 to 3 classes increase over the past 10 years. And again, that could be spread. We don't have that information yet about which, it could all be in one school, could be spread about. And we will be taking a closer look at the schools and their capacity needs. So for household size and tenure, the average household size has gone up in Parsippany, where it's stayed flat in Morris County. And the housing tenure, Parsippany has a greater number of renters, 37%, compared to Morris County, which is just at 25%. So the housing supply in Parsippany is really well balanced. You can see here the 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms are about the same, about 5,000-ish, 4,000 to 5,000 households. This is in 2016. Those have actually gone down a little bit. It's 1%, 2%, so it's not a huge difference. The amount of 5 bedrooms is interestingly much lower at 860 households living in a 5-bedroom house, again compared to the 4,000, 5,000 numbers in the smaller units. And then households by type, Parsippany is for families. We have married couple families and single parent families. The number of households with families has increased since 2000, and non-families living together, roommates, 2 or more people, and individuals living alone, those have decreased since 2000. With race and ethnicity, Parsippany is a diverse place that is becoming more diverse since 2000. 1 out of every 3 residents today in 2016 is born in Parsippany is born outside of the country. The biggest countries of birth, about 15% come from India. Other big ones are Eastern Europe, South America, China, and the Philippines. And we're going to hand it back to Susan for some economic information.
Great. So, in some ways, the data that we see helps us understand things a little bit better, and in some ways, it tells us we should ask some more questions and get some more information. So some of what Taylor was just saying is very characteristic of a suburb, and some of it is not quite. So usually we're seeing elsewhere more households living alone, more households maybe without families. That's not the case here, and we're also usually seeing declining household sizes. Again, not the case here. So there's some things that some of you might be aware of, actually, that make Parsippany a little bit different and kind of worth digging in and getting a better understanding of. But now we're going to move to economic issues, and particular jobs. So we all know that Parsippany has a ton of office space, which means a ton of jobs. So we want to get a sense of sort of who's holding those jobs and where do they live, and we've started to delve into that a little bit. You have just over 26,000, about 26,000 and a half jobs as of 2015 in the township, but the vast majority of those jobs are not held by township residents. And we'll talk a little bit later about what that means in terms of commutation and traffic inflow and outflow. I will say that that's not terribly atypical for a suburb, particularly one that is commutable to New York City. You often see not a whole lot of overlap between people who both live and work in the town. But in terms of your job picture, you can see, if I can get the pointer to work, yes. You can see that this was the recession. I think we can all expect that. So you went down to about 47,000 jobs and change as of 2011, and as of 2015, it's pretty much recovered almost exactly back to the 2005 level. So that's good news in terms of the job picture for the township. Where they are, where these jobs are located, is pretty much where you would expect based on where we all know the office parks are and the major corridors. So obviously Route 80, 287, Route 10 corridor, these correspond to the large office campuses as well as some of your retail corridors like Route 46. So a little bit about that, what we call inflow and outflow of jobs. So every day, as of 2015, you had about 52,578 jobs coming into Parsippany, and you had about 23,308 jobs leaving Parsippany. So Parsippany residents who were working elsewhere. The overlap in terms of people who both live and work in the township is about 4,000 jobs. And Noah is going to go through a little bit of the transportation picture and kind of where people who live in Parsippany are working. And that's helpful to get a sense of what that means for traffic and housing and other issues. In terms of your land use, this is a land use map that I know none of you can read, but you can kind of see some of the big colors, right? So pink is office, corporate office space generally, and as I said, it's pretty much where you would expect it to be, where you know it to be. You see a lot of green on here, particularly here in the southeastern corner of town. That's the Troy Meadows, and it also corresponds to township parks, county parks, other open space, whether it's privately owned or publicly owned. You also see a lot of light yellow, and that is single-family residential. Very common for suburbs like Parsippany, that is a predominant land use. But you also see various other shades of yellow and orange and brown, and those are different levels of intensity in terms of number of units. So the brown is multifamily. You have a fair amount of multifamily housing. And then the blue represents municipal or other government institutional type uses. You also have, and this is kind of the breakdown, you can see just how much open space you have. About a third of your land area is open space, about another third is single family residential, and everything else sort of falls in the remainder. You have a fairly low amount of vacant land, 7%. And so what that means is if you're looking at new development, there's not a lot of opportunity for new development on undeveloped land, particularly since some of that vacant land might have environmental constraints. There's probably a reason why it's still vacant. So when you think about potential development in Parsippany, it's probably going to take the form of redevelopment of existing sites or areas. In terms of residential density, as I said, you do have a fair number of apartment complexes. These are in the brown. And then the orange shade is 2 to 4 families, so kind of the middle medium density. And then obviously plenty of single family housing as well. These are all pictures of housing in Parsippany. And so you get a sense of, even within a single family context, which are these 2 photos on the left, how different they can be based on the lot sizes, just the density within neighborhoods. And I think you all probably have a sense of that just being in neighborhoods and driving through neighborhoods. And then you have the 2 to 4 family residential, and then the apartment complexes, which tend to be more of a garden apartment type development. And this is housing density in terms of people. It corresponds pretty closely to the type of housing in terms of apartments or single family homes. And then this is everything that's not residential. So again, you see that pink color, which is strictly office. And then you can see the darker, the red, which is commercial, that's retail, and maybe professional offices. And then you have a small amount of light industrial area, which is the purple, kind of up here, a little bit down here. Not a huge land area, but you do have some sort of industrial warehousing type uses. So looking at your office trends in Parsippany, I think everybody knows, you've probably been reading in the papers for years now, about the office vacancies in New Jersey, in northern New Jersey in particular, and in Parsippany in particular. You have an enormous amount of office space, and you have a fairly high vacancy rate based on that space. So it has improved. It is still improving, and you can see the orange is Morris County, and the blue line is Parsippany. This is the office vacancy rate. So it has been declining, which is a good thing, and kind of moderating, but it's still in worse shape than the county and in worse shape than the state as well. The good news is that the rents are going up, the asking rents for tenants, which is good news for if you're an office owner. That helps. So you're now in a better shape in terms of asking rents than the county. So that's a sign of some improvement in office health. There are some things in the pipeline. What we are seeing a little bit in the planning board, some office park owners that have high vacancies are coming in and kind of ramping up their amenities, trying to attract that millennial workforce, really trying to make their uses more attractive. Other office park users are thinking about other uses that to introduce, maybe a little bit of multifamily residential, maybe hotel, recognizing that there probably isn't the demand for all the space that exists. So those owners are thinking about their options and trying to, to get those vacancy numbers down. Okay, retail. Retail is also tough, as we all know, right? Everybody probably gets those Amazon boxes, especially this time of year. And so it's made things really challenging for retailers, whether they're a mom and pop or whether they're a national store. So Parsippany is not immune to that. And you actually have a fairly high retail vacancy rate as well. It's about 15% in 2018. It's gone up recently, and it's higher than the county. I mean, I think if you drive down 46, you can probably see that, right? I mean, some of those big box stores that are just downsizing, and you're not immune to that. Partly it's because you have so much of that type of space anyway. So the asking rents here, though, are increasing, which is, again, a sign of maybe some improving health in your retail market. Industrial, as I said, you have a fairly small industrial area. The growth in that market has been somewhat limited, it's got a vacancy rate of about 11%. We're going to look into this a little bit more to try to understand what that means, because elsewhere in New Jersey, the industrial market is actually pretty strong. And is one of the kind of bright spots of the commercial real estate market. So we want to try to get a sense of what's happening in Parsippany and can we capitalize on some of that growth that the rest of the state has been seeing. Again, rent's going up here as well, but vacancy is still relatively high. So I think this is the last map of my section. This shows you the various, which I know you can't see the details, but the various sort of public municipal type of uses, police, fire, ambulance, the town hall, other township-owned facilities, parks, schools, and there's a lot of them, as you can see. There's a lot of services that the township provides and the school district as well. That you get a lot by living in Parsippany. I think our challenge is to understand what the needs are for the various uses, the various facilities, and we hope to hear from you tonight on some of that. What would you like to see in terms of improvements, what's working well and you don't want to see change? So those are things to think about when we think about community facilities. And now I'm going to turn it to Noah for traffic discussion. I know that's why you're all here.
Yeah, I'll be at the traffic table if you guys can tell me where all the hot spots are. I was also stuck in traffic on the way here, so on 202. This is just a map that shows jurisdiction of roads in Parsippany. Parsippany does have a lot of interstate highways, which is unique in a lot of ways, definitely different than a lot of communities that we work in. I'll talk about it later, but it does have a dramatic effect on the geographic orientation of the township. It does break it up. And you have a number of state roads and county roads. And what the jurisdiction map shows is not just who is responsible for the road, but also the level of mobility. There are technical classifications for each of these roads, but basically the state roads are more likely to offer more access, more movement, and fewer opportunities to access local roads, whereas the local roads, obviously, that's more of your residential streets, slower speeds, etc. There are, I'll get into it a little bit more, but first I want to talk about just general commutation trends. What this shows is just the importance of the automobile in Parsippany, and also that the roads are not just used by residents, but it's part of a regional network. As you can see in the top map, that over 60% of Parsippany residents have a commute less than 30 minutes. So most people are driving to locations that are relatively close. And over almost 90% commute by car. About almost 10% carpool, but over 80% commute in a single occupancy vehicle. The compass map on the right shows the direction of where people go to work from Parsippany. So you can see most people are traveling east. So that could be Bergen, Passaic, Essex County. We see those counties have about 40%, that's about 40% of workers from Parsippany. 15% of the population of residents work in Parsippany, and about a quarter of the residents work within Morris County. So just to give you a sense. As well, I'm just going to go back here one slide real quick. There were only about 5% commuting to New York City, which was surprising to us. So it just shows that, while there are a lot of people commuting there, it's not as substantial as the local counties in New Jersey. But that does bring us to public transportation. And you can see in this map there are a variety of local and regional routes operated by New Jersey Transit. Lakeland has an express bus route that runs off of Route 46 that picks up passengers at the park and ride lots on the various locations on Route 46. And Parsippany also does have a free local transit service operated during the week and on weekends, just within the boundary of Parsippany. You can see here, this map just illustrates some of the issues that the regional highway network presents. It really does break up Parsippany. The orange arrows are just the connections east-west, north-south over the interstates. And circulation, just having a robust circulation network really depends on having a lot of opportunities to get from one place to another. And because of the highway system, it does present a challenge, and we're going to look into that a little bit more to see where there are opportunities for cars, for pedestrians, bicycles, etc. This is a map that shows crashes. The data is only for 1 year. Typically, we like to look at 3-year samples to just get more data. But you do see that you do have a number of hotspots, and we're going to use this just as a way to kind of start to get into the data. So we're going to talk with the police department and the fire department and local stakeholders just to understand, what's going on in Beverwyck, in Lake Hiawatha, and along Route 10 and Route 202. What are some of the issues? Can they be resolved? We also want to hear from you to understand. This is just a map from looking down from the sky. You're using the roads every day. You're our experts. So we really want to hear from you to understand specifically where these issues are. This map shows sidewalks and parks. It also shows schools, which are kind of hard to see in this map, but ultimately we're going to look at where the sidewalk network is robust, where there are gaps, and where potentially we might advocate for new sidewalks, and that might be near schools, near retail corridors, near bus stops, in areas where you already have sidewalks in order to connect neighborhoods together. And you can see we do have a robust network in Lake Hiawatha, in Troy Hills, limited in Lake Parsippany, and so we'll look at opportunities to see where there are gaps in the network, where there's low-hanging fruit, where there are some bigger challenges. So, and we know that's an issue that has come up in the township.